Orcus has sunk their evil little fingers into everything, including everyone's favorite ancient mutant warrior goddess Genesis. But that doesn't mean Arakko Public Radio is going off the air. This week, we are talking about all the X-Men comics from the week of June 14th, 2023, as we continue the final approach to the Fall of X. I'm that nerdy Papa Bear Rod, and this is the guy who is ready for the meaningless minis to finally end. My one and only co-mega mutant, Keegan.
Hey, how's it going?
I stumbled on it, but I'm not redoing that. My co-mega mutant Keegan. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing okay. And you are right. I am so ready for all of these meaningless minis to end.
I feel like for the first time since we started this podcast, just under a year ago, so not that long ago, but like we're to the point where only the main books are capturing my interest, like, at all. I was trying to be into these minis when they started, and now here we are in the final issues of a bunch of them, and it's all just hurry up, get past it, get me to the Fall of X. I'm ready.
Exactly.
That said, in this episode, we are talking X-Men Red number 12, Wolverine number 34, Rogue and Gambit number 4, X-23 Deadly Regenesis, X-Cellent number 4, and the X-Men stories from Marvel's Voices Pride number 1. A lot of that's going to be punted, but we'll be talking about it all. But first, we're recording this on Father's Day. You're probably not going to hear it till the morning of the day after Father's Day. But regardless, Keegan.
Yes.
Who's the mutant daddy?
The mutant daddy?
Like, I mean, we could have a couple. When you think of mutants and daddy, who are you picturing?
I would say, it's Cable, right? Like, it's Cable.
He's on the short list. I'll give you, he's on the short list for sure.
It helps when, Josh Brolin plays him too,
Yeah,
like...
That's fair. I thought maybe you were going to go Magneto.
Yeah, Magneto is like my number one or number two, depending on the day kind of thing.
I think the only real answer is Apocalypse. I'm just going to say it. I think Apocalypse is the mutant daddy.
That's fair.
You know what? I want some answers. I'm going to put it as a poll on Spotify, and I want you to write in, record it, and we'll play the best of them. Send us a video of it in the Discord. I want to know your plug for the mutant daddy. You ready to talk X-Men Red number 12?
I am so ready to talk X-Men Red number 12.
Written by Al Ewing, drawn by Jacopa Camagni. It opens with a flashback of the White Sword freeing John Ironfire as Genesis' forces near. Knowing soon he and his forces would be under her control, he gives John his sword with the intention to free his friend, warn the Great Ring, and keep the sword itself out of Genesis' hands. Tell them all, but especially the Seed of Loss, he says. We see the original Four Horsemen are reunited and working for Mommy Genesis again, and they're working together to lay siege to the White Sword's ivory spire. They infect members of his army with a contagion that spreads quickly, though White Sword's touch manages to heal the infected. Genesis herself arrives on the back of a dragon and questions the White Sword on where his namesake blade, Purity, is, and he asks, where's Apocalypse? Which we were all thinking, we were all asking. Neither of them gets an answer, though. Genesis activates her annihilation staff and demands all acknowledge her rule as the true General of Arakko. The next panel shows her on her throne with everyone bowing to her. The story cuts to Arakko in the Red Lagoon, where John is regaling the Brotherhood of his journey to bring them the message and purity. Storm wants to call the Ring together to discuss matters, while John is upset that they wouldn't immediately gather the troops. This isn't a time for talk. Fisher King and John exchange harsh words, and Storm puts them both in line. John offers one final word of warning. When she arrives, it'll already be too late. Right on cue, Genesis arrives, forming her own Okara Gate in the ruins of Arakko Prime, and meeting with Mariana Stern of Coven Akaba, revealing not only an alliance with the Coven, but Orcus as a whole. That's right, y'all. X of Swords 2 Electric Boogaloo is all about Genesis working with Orcus. Do you know what this is, Keegan? Do you know what this is?
X of Swords 2.
But also, It seems like a really bad, like, there seems like they're throwing everything at the wall to convince us that Orcus is as big of a threat as they want it to be. They're really pulling all the stops out here in the build up to be like, they control literally everything.
Yeah, that's true.
I, how do we actually feel about them pulling back in all of these threads to immediately connect it to Orcus and Covenacaba and all of that?
I think it's an interesting choice.
I'm genuinely curious. I've seen reactions going both ways. I'm not like being judgy. I'm asking
Yeah.
like, do you have a take yet?
I think I am, as of right now, I am okay with it, right? Like, I'm not, fully like jumping on board, like, yeah, let's go. I'm not mad at it. Like, right now, I'm like, okay, yeah, this makes sense. And I think it goes back to kind of like when I was saying, I want to say, yeah, we were saying it during Shark Girl Week, is that, the fall of X, I think the idea is going to be that it's this attack with this attack with this attack and this other attack. It's the having to battle on all fronts is what takes them down rather than
Yeah.
like one threat. So building up as many, tiers of attack as they can makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think I see Orcus's motive. I really need them to quickly establish Genesis's motive here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it seems weird she would like give her allegiance, and even it seems like subservience to someone else. Like, it seems like her whole shtick is, I'm still in charge of Arakko. You haven't run Arakko well enough. I'm going to take Arakko back. But to do it by saying, like, yeah, I'll fall in line with all these other tendrils of Orcus. It strikes me as a bridge too far, but Al Ewing has earned the runway to sell me on stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm not, like, upset about it, but I am definitely confused by it.
Yeah, it's like I'm much more willing to see things play out when it's in the hands of like Ewing or Gillen or Spurrier.
Yeah. So that is probably my only negative on the issue, is I'm confused on that direction. The execution to me was pitch perfect. I loved everything we got here. What was your overall take on the issue?
I thought it was a fun issue. I liked it a lot, like as a whole issue. I think you kind of nailed it, where it's like kind of not sure where they're going with this. I'm waiting to see, what this is. Maybe it's she doesn't care about, any of Krakoa, so she's going to work with them so they can take care of Krakoa while she takes care of Arakko, or she's just going to betray them once they do all the dirty work,
I think that's the hardest thing for me to buy in on, is like, she just seems like such a bigger deal.
Yeah.
Like, it definitely seems like at any point she could just be the main. If they are burning her to establish Orcus's stakes, and that this X of Swords 2 story is going to only be the next 4 issues of X-Men Red, and that's all we're going to see of the Genesis War, like, that's going to be underwhelming for what her coming back could be. Like, that could be the big crossover of 2024. You know what I mean? Like, they could make that a whole year wrapped around it, just like they do with X of Swords.
Absolutely.
I think that's my fear.
When you drop a name like the Genesis War, that's very much being, I fought alongside your father in the Clone Wars, and then not talking about the Clone Wars for 30 friggin' years. That, you could do something with Genesis War like that, and
totally. We've made that comparison before. That is exactly what that scene in the Sins of Sinister like evoked, was that planting a seed that someday down the line will show you what this is. So if this is that seed growing, I'm really afraid that they're not going to let it become the massive oak it could be. I got a few different relationships I really wanted to kind of peel into a little bit here. So Genesis and the White Sword, which is really interesting, the way his character, I guess, has been softened, because his whole thing was the eons and eons of fighting. All he cared about was fighting. So it's really interesting that he, when he hears of her returning, is inspired to not only free John and send John, but attempts to save Arakko, who last we saw him, he couldn't really care less about. So knowing Ewing, I really hope we get kind of a flashback focus issue at some point that's about White Knights or the White Swords experience from the end of X of Swords to now, whatever has changed his motivation in that way, because he's got a backstory in his head. That's just the way Ewing writes. Is he always like he wouldn't make that big of a character shift without there being a reason behind it, and I really hope we can see that play out.
Yeah, I would like to see that too. Just like, like you said, Ewing doesn't make these choices for no reason.
Yeah.
There's a plan in everything when it comes to Ewing. And so I want to see that plan.
Yes. White Sword's relationship with John was really interesting.
Happy Pride.
Yes. Yes. So we find out they were friends before he was one of his 100. That he has an intimate nickname for the White Sword of Blue. And when he sets him free, like, oh, you're finally gonna age. It's very, very erotic, like, scene where the implications are definitely there. But also it's really interesting to me that a friendship would survive the kind of torturous existence we were kind of beat down with them having. That yeah, he has to resurrect him every night, and yet it seems like their friendship is still as genuine as ever, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And then the final one that really stood out to me was Fisher King's immediate kind of distaste, or like he immediately butts heads with him, when generally what we see from the Fisher is he wants to soften Arakko. His whole shtick has been like bringing everyone together, like a new age, a new era, less vitriol, less. So it's interesting to see him immediately in conflict with a brand new face. But then the more I thought about it, it does kind of make sense, because John represents only the old Arakko, but like I was saying, the old hardest of the hardcore of them, the 100 that stood with him and died every night, and all they lived for was violence. So I think that's probably the thread I'm most excited to see further develop, is how those two interact going forward. I know it seems like Ironfire is Ewing's pet character at this point. Like, I've seen some people online saying that he's already being overexposed for how recently he was made. But I want to see every interaction we can between John Ironfire and the Fisher.
I do too. And like, that's a good point. Like you brought up, like the Fisher King really does see him as like a threat to everything he has tried to advance on Arakko.
And it's kind of the first threat we've seen him exposed to.
Yeah.
That he's been a step ahead of everybody. And so this is an interesting parallel with Immortal, that Red doesn't show us the politics as often, but the politics when they're there are such a cool mirror of the politics of the Krakoan Council. And like, I want to see that. I want to see those two going head to head. I love how clear it is that Bobby is really in more control than he ever has been. That the Brotherhood meets in his bar, the Red Lagoon now, and it was the Night Seats, it was Storm, and were the only ones there. But anyways,
yeah,
that they're kind of the first group that gets to interact with whatever the new problem is, and then it gets taken to the ring as a whole. So like the Night Seats are like a true shadow council now, and he's truly running it. It's just so cool to see Sunspot in that position.
Absolutely. I mean, like, finally some appreciation for him.
Yeah. Well, and that's so the kind of thing he's just perfect for, is that kind of espionage, run things behind the scenes without being as upfront and honest as the ring or the Quiet Council is forced to be that behind the scenes guy in charge. The line where the White Sword said, "Tell everyone, but especially the seat of laws." We talked a lot around the Judgment Day issues about how Ewing writes like poetically, the way he phrases things, and just that he can evoke. And there was something about that line that hit so hard for me, because the seat of loss is who is in charge after a battle's already been lost. Like, that's in the so him before we even see the conflict begin saying, make sure the lady that's in charge after we've already lost hears it.
It tells you everything you need to know about how this is going to go. This is not going to go well.
It's exposition without being expository.
Yeah, it's a lot of exposition in 5-6 words.
Yeah, I loved it. It was so good. Does all of the Covenant Kaba stuff this week mean Captain Britain, the mini, now matters?
Am I allowed to just say no?
Yeah, let's just say no. We could just say no and move on. Genesis's motive seems to be that she believes Storm's leadership is why they lost to Uranos in Judgment Day.
Yeah.
Do we think there's anything Genesis could have done to make it go differently? Like, if we're being honest about it.
I don't think so.
Like, when you think about the Omega shit that Storm and Magneto were doing,
yeah,
I just... What's Mommy gonna do that's gonna be any different? Like, Uranos was just wrecking house.
And I think that's why I think that it's like a flaw in her logic. Like,
right.
She would not have been able to do what Storm did, to give Magneto his time and everything he needed. So I don't think it would have helped. I think it probably would have went even worse.
I think so too. But I think it's completely in character for her to believe that. Like, I don't think that's a flaw in the story. I just think that's an interesting motivation for a character when she's just straight wrong.
Yeah. No, it's not a flaw in the story. It's a character flaw because she's just wrong and prideful.
Wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so there was a nice continuity error fix that I don't know if you remember me ranting about way back when we did Judgment Day, but so there was a random Judgment Day thing when the attack on Arakko happened, where it specifically listed Arakko's population as 1 million.
Yes.
And everyone pointed out right away that, hey, like 3 issues ago, it was 2 million. And the editor, Jordan D. White, pointed out, like, yeah, but you know that thing where they talked about there being a bunch of mercenaries? But it always felt a little forced because you'd think, like, half the population just disappearing would be, like, noticed.
Yeah.
Well, it was noticed, apparently. And Stern, in her letter describing the reasons why Genesis probably won't be happy with Storm, describes it as fully half of the Iraqi population being scattered to the winds of space as mercenary trash. So apparently that isn't just an editor throwing out a fix. They've now canonized it and made it part of the character motivations of both Orcus and Genesis, and I love it. I love that they're fully incorporating and fixing that typo that Kieran Gillen accidentally wrote.
Yeah, I think it's a really clever fix that kind of just makes it work better, more cleanly. It's not just oops, we messed up. It's like, okay, we're going to make this work for another storyline now.
Okay, I already told you I only had one problem. I do have a second problem, and I don't remember if we ended up talking about it last issue or it might not have stood out to me as much last issue. We switched artists when we came back from Sins of Sinister.
Mm-hmm.
I missed that Stefano Caselli art.
I do too. And, nothing against Jacobo. Like, their art is good too.
Yeah, it isn't unserviceable, but it's missing that pop that just made the first 10 issues like the best comic of last year.
Yeah, something about Caselli's art paired with Ewing's narrative really just made the book sing on another level.
They had a synergy just like Kieran Gillen and Lucas Wernick over in Immortal. You feel the filler issues there. I don't know if this is filler issues or if this is a new permanent artist, but you feel the fillerness of these issues too in the art department. Where's Daddy?
Where's Daddy?
Where
you at?
I get that they reference it in the issues, so they're gonna give us Apocalypse eventually, but where is he? Where's Daddy?
Where you at though?
I mean, I guess in 2 weeks we get a book literally called The Heralds of Apocalypse. So hopefully that's where we see him. But
I'm hoping.
But where's Daddy? I'm really curious to see if he ends up standing up to Genesis, if he's on Team Genesis suddenly, because he left really under the guise of like, I'll keep her reined in. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Wolverine.
Yeah. Click
Oh,
on over.
do you remember how I told you I had to click over? I
Yeah.
totally was super late clicking over. So the first like 4 minutes of us talking about X-Men Reds can have no
That's
box
okay.
art, but that's all right. Wolverine 32, written by Benjamin Percy, drawn by Juan Jose Rip, opens with Jeff Bannister's military buddies opening fire on Wolverine and Maverick on their little raft in the ocean, still under the assumption that Wolverine is one of the Wolverine clones. It's an absolutely gorgeous drawn sequence, including a shot of Beast's kaiju base directly underneath him, like looking up, watching the bottom of the boat. But seriously, this is the first 8 pages of this book. It takes a third of the entire runtime for Wolverine to radio his friend to be like, "Bro, it's me," and Bannister to be like, "Sorry, Lolo, my B." Bannister lands his helicopter on this big piece of sea ice, and he and Logan chat before kaiju attack. The helicopters swoop in and fire on the kaiju, so it like submerges, but Jeff is like caught in the vortex of the water, so he gets sucked down. Logan tries to swim after him, but Maverick convinces him to give up and let go of his friend. So they go pout in a bar in Norway, and one of the clone Wolverine shows up. Looks like he's got like a bomb, but it's hologram of Beast, who invites him to dinner, but alone. So they meet at this snooty restaurant in the Faroe Islands where Beast suggests Wolverine leaves him the hell alone, but as an act of good faith, he wants to trade Bannister for the Wolverine clones that Wolverine and Maverick have in custody because they're expensive. I need to know more about this process. We've heard that they're expensive. We've heard that they're just as good as the other clones. We've heard that they're not quite matches. We keep hearing different things about these clones. I want to know what the hell Beast is doing to make these clones. Anyways, Maverick reveals that the Wolverine clones seem to be regrowing full intelligence because of their healing factors, because sure, let's give Percy another easy out to just end the story after 3 years. And then we see Beast prepared for the prisoner exchange, flanked by his Wolverines that might turn on him any moment. That Percy pacing, eh?
Okay. Here's the thing about this Percy pacing that really irritated me is, we spend, what did you say, 8 pages?
It was a full 8 pages before
we spend
he made the
8
radio call.
pages on that, but the hologram message is a data page. Like the big hologram.
Percy is like everything people complain about the data pages. I am a pro data page guy. Percy's data pages are lazy.
No, absolutely, especially because like that, I would want to see that hologram more than not see the hologram.
Yeah,
I would want to see that moment, but no, and it.
I like that they took 8 pages for that chase sequence, and then they just were in a bar in Norway. That was 2 pages, and then they were in the Faroe Islands at some snooty restaurant.
Yeah.
What?
And then then Beast gets to be a bargain bin Denethor and eat like a pig the whole time. Like,
okay,
it wasn't even menacing.
I liked that. Okay.
I disagree.
I hear you. I do have a mini rant that's actually more positive than most of my rants.
Okay, let's hear it.
So the pacing, 100% sucked.
Yeah.
This one leaned far enough into the comedy. I actually give this issue an overall thumbs up, believe it or not.
Oh.
So Bannister is the constant damsel in distress, including the absolute dog shit decision to meet on a chunk of an iceberg.
Yeah,
what the fuck? Why did you land a helicopter on floating ice?
Isn't he supposed to be in the intelligence community?
Rappel down and land in the boat that's already there. I don't know. There's plenty of options, but anyways, like that was legit funny to me. Like they couldn't. Like there's so many ways they could have avoided him getting sucked into a vortex by the kaiju. But then you just brought up the imagery of Beast, like evil monologuing while just destroying that fucking lobster. Like the way that man ate the lobster was hilarious in a Michelin star restaurant while Wolverine is in his just rat Like, he's been at this mission for weeks, so he's just disheveled as fuck, and they're sitting alone in the fanciest of fancy restaurants. Uh, I found all that actually pretty funny. I'm not saying this is top of my stack. I'm not saying suddenly I like it, but there's no reason for Percy not to lean on this side of his writing. We've had other. There was a month or two. I don't remember if it was X Force or this one. I had the same comment of like, this leaned heavy enough into the comedy that I legit found it good. And this is the second one this year probably, and I don't understand why he doesn't do this more often and instead leans on the Wolverine self-hatred, like overwritten, overwrought bullshit he does so often. Because I can handle funny Percy. When he does this, it feels earned. It feels like I can enjoy it.
And I think that's a valid point that you make, but for me, the reason why I had a problem with it, and it kind of ties into the point you're making, is it did not feel funny to me. Like, it did not feel like it was intended to be funny. To me, it did. It genuinely felt like he was trying to have some moment like Denethor, where he's eating and there's the singing and the tomatoes, Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, absolutely.
It felt like it was supposed to be that, like this kind of haunting moment, and I think that that's just because of the history of Benjamin Percy, right? Like, all of the Wolverine and X-Force books, like, it feels like it's supposed to be so overwritten, and Wolverine is doing his best BJ Blazkowicz of like, it's cold, but I felt colder, and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
And so it doesn't read as funny to me, and it reads as overwritten.
See, and I have to be 100% honest. Not knowing enough about the behind the scenes guy that is Benjamin Percy, and with how rarely the comedy hits for me, it's hard for me to be able to say how intentional it is.
Yeah.
And it could be all on Juan Jose, because the art slayed this issue, I felt like. Like I said, as much as I hated that they wasted 8 pages on it, there was some gorgeous shots in those first few pages. The cover of this issue is one of the coolest covers ever, just like Wolverine jumping down onto the kaiju, which is a scene not in the book. So I don't know why we got that really cool cover that had nothing to do with it, but so it could just be the way he drew it made the lobster scene funny to me. I don't know, but to me, if every issue was this, I could live with this book so much better than I do when we get one of these every, I don't know, an arc, or once every 6 months. And so you have to trudge through the worst of it. And I still hate the pacing.
The pacing is such a problem to me. Like, it really is.
Oh, you know what? I skipped my initial joke I was going to make about the lobster. I'm going to read it because I do like it. So Beast absolutely annihilated that lobster. I imagine the scene of Beast just tearing into it like a raccoon with a discarded McDonald's bag was autobiographical to Benjamin Percy and how he eats his meals. Like, I just picture that guy just ripping into every meal he eats the way Beast was eating.
That's fair. Honestly, yeah.
Probably. You know how people are saying Valentine Wong is a self-insert for Alyssa Wong?
Yeah.
I think Beast, especially in that scene, is a self-insert for Benjamin Percy.
That's dark. That's concerning. That's
just his eating habits, not like fascist stuff.
Not the fascism.
Speaking of the fascism, is Fall of X gonna finally be the end of this fucking arc? Is 2024 the year of Redeemed Beast finally?
I mean, maybe. So here's my problem. Is if we go back to the what's it, Timeless? Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
The Timeless issue where there's
we had the army of Beasts.
Is that just getting swept under the rug, like in this like damn near B plot X-Force?
Or was that just because those don't always, like, the visuals aren't always 100% what we end up seeing, right? They're like hints at it. So is that literally the Beast army he has here? Is that literally just?
that's kind of my problem, right? Is like I liked the idea of this beast army, right? This like
And
literal.
instead, it's a Wolverine army where he uses beasts to kind of be their commanders. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Like,
I don't know. It could be. It could be that we're still headed for that. I mean, we're basically halfway through the year,
yeah,
so the Spider-Man we saw did end up being Nightcrawler. So to me, that's a win out of Timeless. Like that was I called
that's
that
true.
pretty early and it worked out just fine. So
I guess we'll have to see what happens.
I don't know that I want to see an army of beasts at this point though. Like yes, that
Honestly,
concept was cool, but do we really need to see yet another like piece of this?
that's
We're getting a
that's
time
actually
traveling thing.
yeah.
I just read because next week we have X-Force. I just read the preview for the next issue and it looks ridiculous. So yay for that. So whatever.
That's fair. That's fair.
But I liked the comedy. It
I
made
like.
me laugh a lot more than Bub Bot in X-Force. So
You know what? That's fair. I'll give it that.
Rogue and Gambit.
Yeah, let's click on over to Rogue and Gambit.
Written by Stephanie Phillips, drawn by Carlos Gomez, it opens with a flashback of the Power Broker showing off the potential of his mind control of villains to various world leaders and Ambassador Brosseau. So more Kabanakaba! Asks if they take special requests. We get a data page that's Gambit texting Storm for relationship advice, which is weird, but at least makes way more sense than Rogue hitting up Rocket Raccoon. But both Gambit and Storm feel super out of character, so even though it makes sense that they'd at least be talking, it still doesn't really work. And then we finally get to the present day, where Rogue is standing over Vanisher's body, who she accidentally killed last issue, removing his mind control chip. She brawls with Power Broker's whole team again, and Manifold manages to get the mind control chip on her. But while it bonds with her, Gambit shows up and interrupts the implant procedure. So she's half mind control, she's still able to talk, but Broker controls her body and her powers. So he makes them fight. That's right, Rogue and Gambit fighting. Can you believe it? Physically this time, instead of the intense emotional trauma they've been inflicting on each other for the other 3 issues. So I guess it is kind of new. Anyways, they do more of that too. Like they are still also verbally just abusing the shit out of each other. With Rogue calling Gambit out on his BS and demanding he leave while she absorbs the various powers of the other mind-controlled baddies. So he finally agrees to go get the remote from the Broker, who's right outside getting in a helicopter. So he makes it crash with his cards, but then Broker's like, oh, but even if you get the remote, she still has to die. And then they hear a and they look, and there's a supercharged Rogue who's out of control that comes crashing out of the base, coming straight for them, and somehow we still have a whole other issue before the inevitable divorce scene. So all of this,
Pointless.
everything that just happened is completely pointless in a world of infinite resurrection. If the stakes are literally just they'll die, then they aren't stakes. That's been the whole point of the Krakoa era, is they have to be creative and give points of conflict that are worse, that are somehow different than just you'll die. Stephanie Phillips missed that memo.
Oh no, I'll be dead, and they definitely won't bring me, a member of the frickin' X-Men, back as soon as possible.
I don't understand how that wasn't the entire end of the story of her being like, if you take it out of me, I'll die. Oh, well, did you have a backup recently, mon cher? And then her being like, yeah, I did. Okay, rip.
Exactly. Oh, I'll die, sugar. Well, luckily, mon cher, you're on the X-Men, so they'll bring you back right away. Oh, that's right. Fantastic.
Rip. Yeah.
Rip. Roll credits.
Continuing down it makes no fucking sense. Juggernaut was a hero in Legion of X months ago. I know I talked about this in the other issues, but the fact they don't even reference it. It's one thing for, everyone always regresses, but the fact that after all of his development in Legion of X, he's regressed to a villain and no one even references, hey, you were just hanging out with us being cool.
Yeah.
Makes no sense. and then, okay. I have a theory because, okay. It's the other thing that emphasize throughout this run, but it got like way heavier this issue with the texting with Storm, him talking about like they prefer their relationship only physical. Like, oh, we just like fit. Like, oh, we only get into bed and get down to business. Like, we prefer naked time to like naked emotional interactions or whatever. Like, it doesn't make any sense for their character arc, right?
No.
Like the majority of their time is they can't touch at all, and it's about their emotional connection, and that's what makes them one of the most popular like ships, is because the teen girls love like the overwrought like tension and romance these two have. So I have a theory. It's not a real theory. We missed an announcement somewhere, and this is like X-23 Deadly Regenesis, and is a throwback miniseries. This takes place in the 90s. It's the only thing that makes any sense, because it would also fix the dumb snafu where they forgot what powers that she has. Like,
But it can't.
no, in story it technically can't. But
Yeah.
I feel like Stephanie Phillips definitely hasn't read X-Men since then or something. Like there's a weird thing where none of this makes sense to the current status quo, and not even just like post Sins of Sinister status quo. Just it doesn't make sense in Krakoa at all. It doesn't
Right.
make sense for anything going on.
Well, that's the unfortunate problem too, is that like it is all Krakoa. They mention Krakoa.
Oh yeah,
They
no, I
have
was
data
bullshitting.
pages.
I was
No, I
being
know, but I'm just like, it sucks because even though that would be a logical explanation for all these other just absolutely silly oversights that you would probably understand if you had to read like the Bible of it,
right.
it just doesn't work. And I think part of it for me, it's just like the longer this goes on, the more pointless it seems at every friggin' point.
100%. And I think I'm getting frustrated because I'm finally buying into the point where, like, as much as I don't like Gambit, the premise of exploring his trauma of everything he's been through so far in Krakoa and how that affects his relationship
Mm-hmm.
is a pretty cool premise. That this
Absolutely.
is executed in the weirdest possible way that's impossible to enjoy.
That's the thing too. It's like, why is there like a conversation between him and Storm in out of character text messages about this trauma, but they don't touch on it in like the important places?
Again, it's another almost abuse of the data page like era. It's such a weird use of the data page. And since you brought up that text message again, why does he text in his accent? He goes through and he puts apostrophes
Yeah.
in the place of like the G's in words.
Yeah.
Why? I have friends that live in New Orleans. They talk like Gambit talks. They do not text like Gambit texts. It makes zero sense.
Now, I will say, occasionally when I'm texting, I will do like, oh, I'm just talking, and I'll do TALKIN, but I won't do the apostrophe, right? I'll just leave it there.
Yeah, well, because on a phone keyboard, apostrophes are way harder than on a keyboard. You got to do like 3 button presses to get to it. So it is absurd, but it also is the kind of thing where I would say I definitely leave out the G sometimes as like more of an emphasis thing or to show my tone.
Yeah, I use it as like a tone of casual.
Yeah, he wasn't doing it like text speak, like he was saving letters. It was full on just exactly how they type out his phrases in speech bubbles.
Like I almost, yeah.
It was just a weird choice that I did not enjoy.
Yeah, now that you see, now you went and you mentioned it, and I'm just like, damn, because like, yeah, why?
I mean, you love to tell me he's just a little guy. That is not little guy behavior.
It's not. It's not the behavior of a little guy or a scamp. It's
that's the behavior of one of those douchebags that's like, No, New Orleans is the best. Like my region is the best region in the world, so I have to emphasize in every conversation that I'm from my region. Like,
No,
not little guy behavior. Not
it's edgy try hard behavior, and that's not what my little scamp would do. Not my little guy.
hashtag not my Gambit.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. X-23 Deadly Regenesis.
Yeah.
All right. Written by Erica Schultz, drawn by Edgar Salazar. It opens with Laura reluctantly carrying out a mission for Chimera, whatever. Sorry. I'm really bad with pronunciation. For those just tuning in, this takes place back during the San Francisco era of X-Men Utopia, so you're talking 2010-ish, in real-time publishing. And last issue, we saw X-23 reluctantly finally agree to carry out a mission after being captured by them because she was like, oh, I'll kill all of these other captives if you don't carry out a mission. So it opens with her being watched by a drone as she's like standing on top of a skyscraper, and she goes down and she breaks into the guy's house, and she conveniently takes out the drone so that she can help him fake his death by like she cuts herself and puts his blood on him and snaps a picture of his corpse and is like, yo, don't leave the apartment for 2 weeks. That's the only way you can protect your family. Don't call anyone, don't text anyone, don't answer the phone. Bye. And then she gets back and Chimera congratulates her, but notes like, it's weird we lost another drone, huh? Like, clearly she's getting suspicious. So Laura goes downstairs and visits Jordan, the Haymaker, the like new villain / anti-hero, whatever he's going to be. They created for this arc, and they establish that there is still animosity, even if they hate the Kingpin more than they hate Laura, because they've got like a punching bag up with Kingpin's face on it. So then Laura is sent on another mission. This time they use not close cap, was closed circuit TVs to watch her instead of a drone, so she can't just get rid of them. She's supposed to steal this test tube from a scientist who's working in a shipping container for some reason. So she goes in, and instead of killing the scientist or the guard who tries to shoot her, she just slices the end of the guard's gun off, and she successfully gets the test tube. But Chimera's like, why didn't you kill them? And she's like, that wasn't the mission. The mission was get the test tube. And so she shoots one of the guards in the room and tells Laura, like, do you see how serious I am now? Jordan's like kind of horrified, and Laura's like, okay, I'll listen from now on. But then Jordan is even more horrified when their benefactor walks in, and it is Kingpin.
Yeah.
Talk about paint by numbers.
Yeah, honestly. Yeah.
The book is so like telegraphed where it's headed. She's my favorite X-Man. I love my Laura Kinney. This book is getting to be a tough read.
Yeah, it's just kind of boring.
It's that, what's a phrase you always say? That like, this was a comic book I read.
Yeah, this was a comic book that happened. Like, yeah. And this book happened.
Like, it was pretty funny to have Haymaker go off on how much faith they have in Chimera in less than 7 full pages later. Like, their worst enemy shows up and is the boss. But again, that was super core. Like that, it was obvious that's where the story was headed from when we saw Kingpin was the villain in the very beginning. I do want this better payoff, kind of like how I'm liking the Storm mini, because clearly it's tied to things that are happening in Krakoa. Whatever goes down in the 5th issue, we better see at some point it referenced with Kingpin now on Krakoa. I want to see current Laura interact with current Kingpin. That's the only thing that'll make this run worth reading. Is if it has payoff in the present day.
I agree completely.
This takes place in the middle of the X-23 series that was running at the time. It's hard to believe the stakes are going to end up very high, because obviously, like, the start of the issue says, like, this takes place before issue 4 of, so you know it's going to get back to the point where she's back in San Francisco with hanging out with Logan. So there's only so much they can do with the last issue.
Yeah.
Let this be the last flashback we ever get of Laura. Give us a present-day Laura book.
Please. Let it be the last flashback for anything that we get in a while.
Yeah. Once Fall of X gets going, we've got that Jean one that I think isn't the Jean Grey one a flashback technically.
I think so. And
Head into a new era where you're putting out enough present day stuff that we don't need throwbacks.
Yeah.
I hate to say it. That's all I got on that.
That's all I got too, and I feel bad about it, but it is all I got.
You know what we get to do now, though?
We get to go.
Wait. I had to click. I had to click. You know what we get to do now?
What do we get to do now? I just honestly, my favorite part about around the Marvel universe is I get to do the Cesaro swing.
Yeah. We don't have the time today because we have quite a few books, but we'll have a wrestling diversion at some point because I watched Collision and I got thoughts. But around the Marvel universe, we had the X-Cellent number 4. Unfortunately, that I don't have many thoughts about. Yeah. It's more the same, and I feel like we really zoned in on the issues and the positives for me, but the issues with this series, that it's kind of a series out of time, that it got killed by the COVID delays, but also just Peter Milligan waited too long to come back and do a social media commentary when he's a literal boomer and does not understand modern social media. So it's commentary on 2012 social media, really. So that hurts.
And it's such a different beast now than it was even 3 years ago.
Yeah.
That to have it be a decade-old commentary is just, it's unfortunate.
The all red art is great. There is definitely good jokes in there. Like, I'm not regretting reading it, but it is not as powerful as the Ecstatics commentary on reality TV was, because that was timely. That was coming out in the era of reality TV, and Milligan was a little more in tune with pop culture at the time. And then we had Marvel Voices Pride number 1, which was a giant anthology this year. Has it always been a 90-pager? I don't remember feeling that thick.
I feel like it's usually pretty thick. I don't know about 90, but it's always been a thicker book.
There was some stories I really enjoyed in there. Did you grab it this week or not?
I did grab it, yeah.
Okay. So there was, I think, really only the 2 that are relevant to our show, and one of them was pretty short. There was Stephen Byrne wrote Jumbo Carnations Ultimate Creations. Jumbo Carnations Ultimate Creations, in case I feel like I might have mispronounced his name there, which is basically him making outfits for people for Pride. But it's this really, I thought it was a nice little kind of commentary on like self-expression, and I liked it.
Yeah, it was fun.
It was 4 or 5 pages. It was pretty brief.
Yeah.
And then more importantly, though, Steve Fox wrote Today's Lessons, which was about Gimmick kind of settling into Krakoan life still and fighting some super Z-tier villains. It was a nice little reintroduction, though, because Children of the Atom was like 2.5, 3 years ago now. It was a
while ago.
If you don't remember, she was the one that dressed up like Gambit, ended up being the only one that actually had mutant powers. Like, her actual mutant powers are shape-shifting and healing, but she was doing the Gambit cards because Children of the Atom were all using tech to masquerade as mutants, and then it turned out one of them actually was a mutant. It was a really nice book. I liked Children of the Atom a lot. We also saw her really recently in the last issue of Bishop War College. She was one of the ones where we saw the second class, and he was like, "Come at me." She was in that group. And then she's gonna be one of the stars of Dark X-Men. Apparent, like, all of the press when they announced it framed it as like a poisonous mutant Gimmick working with or under the control of the Goblin Queen. So it sounds like she might be kind of the main character, and we see all the bigger mutants like through her eyes. Maybe, I don't know, but for some reason here, still dressed as Gambit, which
because he's just a little guy.
It just seems weird that you're fully public now with your actual power set. It seems weird you're dressed like Gambit, but that's okay.
Sometimes you just want to be in your little guy cosplay.
I liked that story a hell of a lot. It gives me a lot of hope for the Dark X-Men, which is honestly probably my second most excited behind Uncanny Spider-Man, but I could see it being the best of the batch. I'm very excited for it.
I think so too.
Any other thoughts on the Pride issue, or any thoughts on either of the stories more than my little quick summary I did?
No really specific thoughts. They were nice reads.
Next week, We've got New Mutants Lethal Legion number 4, Betsy Braddock, Captain Britain number 5, so at least one of them's ending, and then X-Force 41. So we get to see another beast from the future who's destroying everything, whatever. Other than those, do you have any late-breaking news or gossip you want to talk?
I don't think so.
All right. Then we'll see you guys next time. I'm not saying next week for sure, because as we record, I am less than 36 hours from having 2 twins sliced out of my wife's tummy and becoming a dad of 3. So probably, maybe, hopefully, you'll get an episode next week. But we don't really know what recording and especially editing is going to look like. So episodes may be late. You may get episodes that were like clearly recorded in chunks where like I got 20 minutes, so I sat down and we talked one book, and then 2 nights later I got another 20 minutes and we got to sit down and talk about another book. I really don't know what it's going to look like, but we're going to do our best to bring you the best version of the show we can.
Absolutely. We'll get episodes out when we can get episodes out. You know, if it
we will
gets
cover every book eventually.
Absolutely. You know, if it gets to the point where we have to do, you know, another Shark Girl Week-esque, you know, catch up, we'll do what we have to do. Yep. We will talk about every page of X-Men content because, listen, guys, we've talked about Benjamin Percy this long. Are we really going to give up now? I mean, come on.
I did get some feedback on Shark Girl Week that people were really grateful that we kept like the weeks separated into separate episodes, even the weeks that ended up really short. So we will attempt to do that. In the past, we had done 2 like supersized double episodes.
Super shows!
And those were fun to record, but I get how when you're like doing backlog stuff, that can make it tricky to catch up. So feedback received. We may fall behind schedule a little bit here. We will do our best not to, but if we do fall behind, we will keep posting episodes as like weeks.
The man is having 2 more kids, right? Like they're not the first ones. There are more kids. Look,
I'm very excited for our little X babies.
Oh, I'm so happy for you guys.
Anyways, until next time, I'm that nerdy Papa Bear on the socials. This guy is Bulk Ranger. We have the Discord that I already referenced at the top that we would love to hear your answers for.
Yes.
Who's daddy?
Who's daddy?
But until next time, never eat lobster.